The rumble of my truck's engine was a familiar comfort as I navigated the winding forest road, the tall trees looming like silent sentinels. The sun had dipped low, casting elongated shadows that danced eerily across the pavement. I'd been on the road for hours, the monotonous hum of rubber against asphalt lulling me into a daze, my mind drifting between memories of home and the promise of a warm meal waiting for me. Suddenly, blue lights flashed in my rearview mirror, slicing through the darkening woods like a knife. I groaned, pulling over to the side. Just what I needed, a run-in with the law. As I shifted the truck into park, I caught sight of the officer approaching, his silhouette framed by the glow of my headlights. "Evening, sir," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. The badge gleamed on his chest, but something about his eyes, dark, calculating, made the hair on my arms stand on end. "Evening," I replied, trying to shake off the unease. "What's the problem, officer?" "Your taillight's out," he said, tapping his flashlight against it like it was a stubborn child. "Mind if I take a look inside?" I hesitated, thoughts racing. "Sure, but it's just a taillight. I've got tools if you want me to fix it." "Let's not bother with that," he said, his smile widening, revealing teeth that looked a little too sharp. "I'd prefer to keep this quick. Just step out for a moment." The air felt thick, almost suffocating. I slipped out of the truck, the gravel crunching underfoot as I moved toward the passenger side of his car. The officer gestured for me to get in, and my gut twisted at the thought of climbing into a police vehicle. "Really? You think it's safe for me?" I joked, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "Of course. I'm just running a routine check," he assured, but his eyes glinted with something that sent a shiver down my spine. Reluctantly, I slid into the back seat, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed in my chest. The interior smelled of stale, coffee and something else, something sharp and metallic. I shifted, trying to ignore the prickling sensation that crawled up my neck. "What's your name?" the officer asked, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Mike," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "What's yours?" "Officer Reed," he said, and I noticed how the corners of his mouth curled up, almost like he was savoring a secret. "You drive this route often?" "Not really. Just passing through on my way to the next stop." The words came out too quickly, as if I were trying to convince myself I was fine. The officer nodded, then fell into a contemplative silence, his fingers drumming rhythmically on the steering wheel. Something in his demeanor shifted, and the air thickened with tension. "What do you do, Mike?" he asked, turning his gaze briefly to meet mine in the rearview mirror. "I drive trucks. Long hauls. Keeps me away from—" I stopped, biting my lip. "From things. You know." "Like what?" He leaned in closer, his breath heavy with anticipation. "Like—" I faltered under his intense scrutiny. "Just life, I guess." The tension in the car was stifling, and I could feel the weight of his gaze pressing down on me. I shifted again, desperate to break the spell. "Any family waiting for you?" he asked, his voice dripping with curiosity. "Yeah, a wife and a kid," I said, forcing a smile. "They'll be worried if I don't get home soon." "Better not keep them waiting then," he said, but there was an edge to his tone, a hint of something darker lurking beneath the surface. Suddenly, the flashing lights of another police car sliced through the trees, illuminating the night with a harsh glow. My heart raced, and Reed's demeanor shifted in an instant. "Stay put," he snapped, his voice icy. The new officer stepped out, a tall woman with stern features and a no-nonsense attitude. She approached Reed's car with purpose. "Reed, step out of the car!" she demanded, her voice sharp as a blade. "What's going on?" I asked, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Just stay inside, Mike," Reed replied, his tone turning cold. "This is none of your business." But I couldn't stay silent. "You can't just—" "Shut up!" he barked, his eyes narrowing. The woman opened the door and pulled Reed out, her grips tight on his arm. "What the hell are you doing?" he growled, but she didn't flinch. "Public interest, Reed," she said, her voice unwavering. "You're under investigation." I barely processed her words as the weight of realization crashed over me. Reed was in trouble. Serious trouble. "Wait, what?" I exclaimed, the panic rising. "What's he done?" "Just sit tight, Mike," the woman said, her eyes flicking to me for a moment, then back to Reed. "You'll see." Reed's expression twisted into a mask of fury, and for a split second, I saw something more in his eyes, something terrifying. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he hissed, a low growl in his throat. "You have no idea." "What does that even mean?" I shouted. The woman tightened her grip, and Reed struggled, but she was strong, her determination unyielding. "Put your hands behind your back," she commanded. "You can't do this," he yelled, but she didn't waver. With a swift move, she cuffed him, the metallic click echoing through the night. "I'm taking you in," she said, her voice steady. "You're not getting away this time." I blinked, trying to process the unfolding chaos. The man who had just sat next to me, his smile so disarming, was being led away like a common criminal. My heart raced, caught between disbelief and relief. "Is he really a danger?" I asked, my voice quieter now, almost fearful. The woman turned to me, her expression softening just a fraction. "You have no idea, Mike. He's been on our radar for a while now. Multiple disappearances linked to his patrols." "Disappearances?" I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Yeah," she squared her shoulders. "We've been waiting for him to slip up. You're lucky we got here when we did." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling in my gut. I'd been sitting in a cage with a predator. What happens now? I asked, voice trembling. "Just stay put. We'll sort it out." She turned, leading Reed toward the other car. As she did, I caught a glimpse of Reed's face. Twisted in rage and something else, fear maybe. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He had been hiding something dark, and I'd almost become part of it. "Mike!" Reed shouted, his voice laced with desperation. "You have to understand. I didn't mean to—" "Shut up!" the woman barked, slamming the door shut. I watched as she climbed into the passenger seat of the second police car, leaving me alone on the darkened road, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. The night felt different now, the shadows deeper, the silence more profound. The trees seemed to press closer, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I shivered, the chilly air creeping into my bones. Minutes passed like hours as I sat in the truck, the engine ticking softly. My mind raced, thoughts spiraling. Had I really been that close to danger? I could have been just another name on a police report. "Hey!" I called to the woman as she stepped out of the car, her expression serious. "What happens to him now?" She paused, glancing back at Reed, who was being secured in the back seat. "He'll face charges, but this is just the beginning. We'll need to investigate further." "Further?" I echoed. What more could there be? She hesitated, as if weighing her words. "We suspect he's been involved in much darker activities. If you have any information—" "I don't have anything," I interrupted, a wave of nausea hitting me. "I just met him. I swear." Her gaze softened slightly. "You did the right thing by speaking up. Just be careful on the road from here on out." I nodded, though the tightness in my chest wouldn't ease. As she slid back into the police car, I caught one last glimpse of Reed. His demeanor now a mix of anger and despair, and I shuddered. The forest, once a familiar path, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. I fired up the engine, the roar breaking the silence, and slowly pulled back onto the road. Each mile felt heavier than the last, the weight of what could have been pressing down on me. I drove into the night, the trees blurring past in a haze, leaving the darkness behind. But the echo of that encounter lingered, a reminder that sometimes the monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they wear uniforms and badges, and sometimes they almost become our friends. The black asphalt gleaming under the moonlight like a serpent waiting to strike. I leaned back in my seat, the truck's engine humming a lullaby that tugged at my eyelids. I hadn't slept in, how long? A day? 2? Time blurred into an indistinguishable smear, and the caffeine coursing through my veins had begun to lose. "It's battle against fatigue." The radio crackled with static. A ghostly whisper in the night, and I flicked it off, the silence settling like a heavy blanket. The headlights pierced the darkness ahead, illuminating the occasional sign, a diner, a gas station, a warning about deer crossing. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles pale against the black leather. "Just a few more miles," I muttered to myself. But the words felt hollow. I needed a break, a moment to breathe, to shake off the creeping shadows that clawed at my mind. A few miles later, I pulled into a rest area, the gravel crunching beneath my tires. The glow of a solitary light flickered near a weathered picnic table, casting long shadows that danced like restless spirits. I swung my legs over the side and stepped out, the chill of the night air hitting me like a bucket of ice. I stretched, arching my back, and took a deep breath, the crisp air filling my lungs. As I walked toward the light, I could hear the faint hum of a generator somewhere nearby, punctuated by the occasional rustle of leaves. It felt peaceful, but there was an edge to it, like a melody that had lost its harmony. I shook my head, trying to dispel the disquieting sensation that something wasn't right. The picnic table was empty, but a strange feeling of being watched prickled at the back of my neck. I glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out from behind a tree, but the area remained stubbornly still. "Get a grip," I whispered, shaking my head. "You're just tired." I took a seat on the table, resting my elbows on my knees, closing my eyes. I let the cool breeze wash over me, hoping to clear the fog in my mind. But then I heard it, a low moan, like the wind through a cracked window. I opened my eyes, heart racing, scanning the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. The only response was the rustle of leaves. I chuckled nervously, the sound bouncing off the trees. Must be the lack of sleep. The night swallowed the highway. Then just beyond the light a figure emerged, pale, ethereal, and shimmering under the moonlight. I blinked hard, convinced it was a trick of my tired mind. But the figure remained, a young woman with flowing hair and eyes that glowed like embers. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I stumbled back, nearly losing my footing. "What the—" "Please," she pleaded, her gaze piercing through me. "You have to help me." I shook my head, trying to dispel the vision. "You're not real, you're a hallucination." "Not a hallucination," she insisted, stepping closer. "I'm trapped here." "Trapped?" The word felt heavy on my tongue. "What do you mean?" "My name is Ilara," she said, her voice trembling like the leaves in the wind. "I was taken. I need you to find the truth." A chill raced down my spine. "Taken? By who?" "By the darkness," she replied, her eyes widening in fear. "You have to listen." "You're the only one who can see me." I rubbed my temples, fighting the dizziness that threatened to consume me. "I need to get back on the road." "I can't help you." "Please," she begged, her voice rising, echoing in the night. "If you leave, you'll never know what happened to me." A flash of something, fear, anger, or maybe both, sparked within me. Maybe I was losing my mind, but the desperation in her tone held me captive. I took a deep breath, the weight of my decision settling on my shoulders like a leaden shroud. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What do I need to do?" "Follow me," she instructed, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. I hesitated, glancing back at the truck, the safety of the cabin seeming so far away. But the allure of mystery tugged at my curiosity. I stepped forward, the gravel crunching beneath my boots. As I followed her into the darkness, the air grew heavier, thick with secrets waiting to be uncovered. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches swaying as if whispering forbidden tales. Ilara led me deeper into the woods, her figure glowing faintly, illuminating the path ahead. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice low, careful not to disturb the stillness. "I was driving," she said, her gaze distant as if she were reliving the moment. "Lost control. I crashed and then nothing, just darkness." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. "And now you're stuck?" "Trapped in this place," she confirmed. "You have to find the spot where it happened." "The truth is there." "What do you mean by the truth?" "The darkness," she whispered again, her voice trembling. "It's not just a crash. It's something more." I nodded, though doubt twisted in my gut. As we walked, shadows danced around us, and the moon's light dimmed, creating an oppressive atmosphere. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had ventured into the unknown, and there was no turning back. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a small clearing. The remnants of a car lay scattered on the ground, metal twisted and broken like a discarded toy. My breath hitched, and I took a cautious step forward. "This is it," Ilara said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is where it happened." I surveyed the wreckage, the chill of the night wrapping around me like a shroud. "What am I supposed to do?" "Look closer," she urged. "Feel the energy of this place." I knelt beside the wreck, the sharp scent of gasoline mingling with the earth. I placed my hand on the cold metal, and suddenly, visions flooded my mind. Screams, the screeching of tires, the blinding headlights of another vehicle coming straight at me. I gasped, pulling my hand back. "Oh God," I breathed, the horror of the moment crashing over me. It wasn't just an accident. No, Ilara said, her eyes filled with sorrow. It was intentional. Someone wanted me gone. Who? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Who would do this? The one who drives this road, she replied, her gaze unwavering. Someone who knew I'd be here. A rumble of thunder echoed overhead and the wind picked up, swirling around us. The atmosphere shifted, charged with an energy that felt alive. I glanced around, panic rising. We need to get out of here. No, Ilara insisted, her voice rising above the wind. You need to confront it. You have to find the driver. Before I could respond, a shadow moved in the trees. A figure stepping into the clearing. My heart slammed against my ribcage as a tall man emerged, his face obscured by the darkness. Who are you? I shouted, backing away instinctively. Just a passerby, he said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. But it seems you've stumbled into something you shouldn't have. Ilara's form flickered beside me, her presence grounding me. Stay back! I shouted, my voice trembling, but I couldn't look away from the figure. Why do you care so much for this ghost? He asked, amusement curling his lips. She's just a memory, a forgotten soul. She deserves justice, I yelled, fury igniting within me. Justice? He echoed, stepping closer, shadows wrapping around him like a cloak. What makes you think you can bring that to her? Because I know the truth, I spat, my fingers curling into fists. You did this! He laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. You're just a tired truck driver lost in the dark. You think you can save her? I might be tired, but I'm not afraid of you, I declared, the fire in my chest burning bright. Ilara deserves to be free, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. The man's expression twisted, a flicker of anger flashing in his eyes. You have no idea what you're getting into, boy. The wind howled, and in that moment I felt the energy shift once again. Ilara's figure pulsed with light, illuminating the clearing, and I felt a surge of strength. I don't care what it takes, I said, my voice steady. I'll confront you whatever you are. Foolish, he hissed, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. Leave her alone, I shouted, stepping forward, the shadows retreating from Ilara. She deserves to move on. You can't keep her here. In a blink, the atmosphere thickened, the air crackling with tension, and the shadows surged forward, swirling around the man like a tempest. He staggered back, confusion flickering across his face. Ilara's voice echoed in my mind, urging me forward. You need to break the chains. I took a deep breath, focusing on the darkness surrounding him. You don't control this place anymore, I shouted, and with a surge of determination, I reached out, my hand stretching toward the figure. Suddenly the shadows writhed, and I felt a jolt of energy burst forth. A shockwave that knocked him off his feet. He stumbled backward, the darkness dissipating around him. No, he screamed, the sound echoing into the night as he vanished into the trees, swallowed by the shadows he once commanded. I turned to Ilara, her form shimmering with a brilliant light. You did it, she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. You freed me. I didn't do it alone, I said, my heart racing as I took a step closer. You showed me the way. I can finally move on, she said, her voice filled with gratitude and relief. Thank you. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the clearing in a warm golden light, I felt the weight of the night lift. Ilara began to fade, her form becoming less distinct. But her smile remained radiant. Remember me, she said softly. I will, I promised, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. With one final nod, she vanished, leaving behind a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves. I stood alone in the clearing, the wreckage still a haunting reminder of the past, but the air felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. I turned back toward my truck, dawn breaking behind me, the road ahead stretching out like a promise. I climbed into the cab, the engine rumbling to life beneath me. As I pulled back onto the highway, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her form lingering in the shadows, but all I saw was the open road. And for the first time in days, I felt a sense of clarity. The darkness no longer held sway over me. I was free to drive, to live, to share the story of Ilara and the truth she had revealed. And as the sun rose high in the sky, I knew that the road held endless possibilities, and I was ready to embrace them.